Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Story Hour. I am your host, Daniel Marcus. My fabulous co-host is Laura Blackwell, and we have been bringing Story Hour to you for just about 5 years now, which is pretty remarkable. Um, I started Story Hour in the early throes of the pandemic, and shortly after I kicked it off, I asked my friend and colleague Laura Blackwell to join me in co-hosting, and since then, pretty much with only a break between Christmas and New Year's, we've been bringing you what we like to think is some of the best spoken word speculative fiction around. Pretty much from every corner in the huge tent that is speculative fiction, uh, new writers, established pros, everything in between. So this week, I'm really delighted to bring in Cliff Winnig and Marion Deeds. Um, I also want to acknowledge SIFWA, the SIFWA Givers Grant, for giving us a little bit of scratch to keep the lights on and the virtual rooms open. And the way this works is very simple. We have two writers, 30 minutes each, and basically they do what writers have been doing for thousands and thousands of years, sitting around telling lies. So um, our first reader tonight is Cliff Winnig. Uh, and Cliff first appeared in June 2020, back in the early fog-shrouded origins of Story Hour. Cliff's work appears on the Escape Pod podcast, in Mad Scientist Journal, and in anthologies such as Many Worlds, High Noon on Proxima B, 2 Hour Transport 2, and Southern Truths. He co-edited the anthology Alternative Liberties. Cliff is a graduate of the Clarion Writing Workshop and has taught writing workshops at local science fiction conventions. He hosts the SF and SF Reading Series and Third Sundays for the B Cubed Sunday Morning podcast. When not writing, he plays sitar, studies Aikido and Tai Chi, and sings bass and baritone in the San Jose Symphonic Choir. He lives with his family in Silicon Valley, which frequently causes him to think about the future. Cliff, really great to have you here. Welcome back. The floor is
Thanks,
yours.
Dan. It's great to be back. It feels like it's only been 5 years. I don't know. But that was just the last week. Uh, anyway, I thought I would start off with some microfiction. Back in the early days of Twitter, when it was still Twitter, there were some markets for Twitter fiction, which was 128 characters, so about 10 to 12 words. So I'm going to read three of those. First one is a horror story. The Tooth Fairy awoke in a generous mood, so that night she brought pliers. Second, with a toothy grin and tail whipping in the wind, it zooms down the street. You try, but you can't outrun a velociraptor on a velocipede. Third one. His halo faded, but his dove-like wings remained. Kate cleaned her knife on crumpled white feathers. Holier than thou really pissed her off. All right, so that's it for the microfiction. Now I've got a longer piece, and it appeared in Southern Truths in October of last year and has sadly become more relevant since its appearance. Content warnings for combat situation and child endangerment, although I will tell you out of the scope of the story, the kids are fine. And drug use. So it's called Degenerates Against Memphis. And every time the word MAD appears, it's in capitals because it's an acronym for Memphians Against Degeneracy. So just when you hear MAD, you know it's an acronym. The raid started out well. Pipe bombs went off like 6th of January fireworks, lighting up the detention center. They breached the outer wall in multiple spots. The nearest watchtower collapsed, and its neighbor began to lean. Floodlights flickered and went out. Tara Lynn Bowman broke cover and ran toward the nearest breach, her comrades close behind. The guards, both regular and mad militia, stared at the damage for several seconds before they finally reacted. Some ran toward the explosions. Others ran away. A few fired into the darkness, seemingly at random. None of them followed a cohesive strategy. Aunt Artemis had been right. Overconfident, the guards hadn't trained for a direct assault. Tara Lynn had almost reached the breach when several rounds whizzed by her head. She dropped and rolled, hoping the smoke, darkness, and lower profile would keep her safe. A raider went down to her left, but with all the smoke, she couldn't tell who. Don't think about it. She had to focus on her own survival, that and reaching Althea. She clambered over shattered concrete and into the yard. The old penal farm's main structure stood intact, looking like the images she'd studied. That was a good sign. They'd all memorized the layout, hoping nothing had changed. Something had, however. Tara Lynn stared at what stood between her and the structure, something not shown in the blueprints or archival images. Cages. Cages full of children. Unlike Althea, these prisoners weren't there for antisocial behavior. They were there because they were brown, Black, South Asian, Latin American, all ages, all rail thin. They huddled together at the back of the cages, clearly terrified by the gunfire and explosions. I have to free them. But Tara Lynn knew if she did that now, many of them would flee right into the firefight and get hit by stray bullets. No, best that they stay put for now, much as she hated to leave them there. On the way out, she'd get them to safety. Assuming she could get herself to safety. Assuming she wasn't shot in the next few minutes. More gunfire sprayed the ground beside her. Tara Lynn cut across the lawn, past the cages, and toward the side door she knew from the blueprints. The children stared at her, eyes wide, as she ran. A bullet struck the concrete wall next to her head. Hands in the air! A man's voice directly behind her. Now! Tara Lynn straightened and raised her hands. Her 9mm Glock lay holstered at her side, worse than useless. If she'd had it out, the man would likely have already shot her. Now turn around. This he delivered in a more normal tone, a voice she now recognized. Mr. Grundy? Turning to face him, she saw she was correct. Mr. Grundy stood with his AR-15 aimed right at her chest, his face a mix of shock and confusion. In the dark, he probably couldn't make out her features beneath her hoodie and anti-facial recognition makeup, but he had to know she was one of his old English students. He recovered quickly, puffed himself up like he'd done when she'd challenged his use of church-approved abridgments. His Trump-red Memphians Against Degeneracy baseball cap clashed with his brown button-down shirt and khaki pants, though the AR-15 went with all of it. Lie down, face down, Tara Lynn. His voice was steady and cold. Damn, he did recognize me. Maybe from my voice? I should never have spoken. Stupid mistake. Her eyes never left the AR-15 as she knelt in the dirt, then lowered herself to the ground. Mr. Grundy stepped toward her. I said face down. Reluctantly, she lowered her face till she couldn't see him or the semi-automatic anymore, just dirt. The deafening bang and spray of blood came a moment later, followed by a thud as Mr. Grundy's body hit the ground. Tara Lynn looked up to see Hudson Rhodes, the Raiders' tactical lead, lowering his .45. Her ears rang in the aftermath. Hudson helped her up. You okay? Tara Lynn nodded, though she wasn't sure she ever would be again. She tried not to look at the body, but she couldn't help herself. Mr. Grundy's hat had come off. A pool of blood oozed from beneath his chest, and his head lay to one side. He stared, unblinking, at nothing. I had him too, Hudson said. Hated his take on Twain. Tara Lynn found felt herself grin despite everything. Hudson grinned back at her, though otherwise he looked all business. A lock of his curly brown hair hid one of his eyes. Okay, Tara Lynn, you're going to be fine, but we need to keep moving. She nodded. Yeah. He returned the nod and took off toward the side door. Tara Lynn followed, but first she unholstered her gun. Degenerates Against Memphis had been Tara Lynn's idea. It had begun as a joke. Those madmen! Althea waved one hand vaguely as she took a long drag on the joint. And women. Tara Lynn leaned against Althea on the bed, pillows propped against the headboard, and watched the smoke curl between them. Althea felt warm and safe. The attic bedroom felt warm and safe with Althea in it. There's more going on inside than they're letting on, Althea said. I mean, beside the actual criminals. We know they've got political prisoners. Too many folks have disappeared. They're going somewhere. Why else would they need those mad militia thugs on top of the regular guards? She handed the joint back. Tara Lynn took a drag, inhaled deep. The smoke slid into her lungs and kept spreading, flowing like honey throughout her body. It eased every thought and muscle it touched. She snuggled against Althea, and Althea made no move to push her away. Memphians against degeneracy, Tara Lynn said. They need a nemesis. And then it hit her. Degenerates against Memphis. Damn! Althea sat up, causing Tara Lynn to slide onto the bed, fully supine. What's wrong? Nothing. I meant DAM. Degenerates Against Memphis. Tara Lynn thought this was just about the funniest thing she'd ever heard. Althea must have as well, since they both giggled, then laughed uncontrollably for several minutes. When Tara Lynn finally caught her breath, she looked up at Althea. She'd shifted to hands and knees and now straddled Tara Lynn on the bed. I really do like that, Althea said. Let's do it. Before Tara Lynn could ask, do what? Althea kissed her. Tara Lynn had only ever been kissed by a handful of boys, and of them only Hudson had been any good at it. But this felt different. It was electric, and the electricity spread from her lips to her chest and throughout her body as the smoke had before. When at last Althea ended the kiss, her wavy red hair hung around Tara Lynn's face like walls of a tent. Althea sniffed, and her cat who ate the canary smile gave way to a frown. She brushed her hair aside and looked to her left. Damn, she said. What? The joint's gone out. An hour later, they stumbled down from the attic bedroom to find Aunt Artemis in the kitchen with a tray of freshly baked snickerdoodles. Now don't eat too many at once. I know what the munchies can do. The girls gave only a token protest of innocence before tucking in. After Tara Lynn's fourth cookie, Aunt Artemis made her slow down. She obeyed, partly to stay on her aunt's good side. She'd given her a place to stay when her parents had kicked her out, but mostly because Aunt Artemis was pretty wise about such things. Perhaps the last Goth in Memphis, Aunt Artemis went to mandatory church on Sunday like everyone else, but always dressed as if for a funeral. Today, she'd broken out some of the black lipstick even she didn't dare wear outside the house. It looked good on her. It even went with the flower-specked apron she still had on, which was decorated with skulls and black roses. After tidying up, Aunt Artemis sat with them and had a snickerdoodle herself. I heard y'all laughing up a storm earlier. What was so funny? In between bites, they told her about what they feared Mad was doing out at the old penal farm, and about Damn. Aunt Artemis didn't seem to find Damn funny, but she did look thoughtful. You know, that's not a bad idea. I bet a lot of your generation feels that way. Maybe enough of you to make a real difference. That had been the start of it. Slowly, carefully, Tara Lynn and Althea talked to their co-workers at Kroger and the second-hand clothing store, their friends from the back pew at church. Someone eavesdropped on her mad stepfather drinking with his militia buddies while working on his truck. Another's older brother had been a guard at the penal farm when it was repurposed as a detention center. A picture emerged. The disappeared went there for re-education or for processing before being sent to labor camps or to dangerous jobs in the fracking fields. The members of DAM were careful. They were methodical. Yet somehow, a few months later, Althea disappeared. Aunt Artemis calmed Tara Lynn down enough to stop her running off to attempt a rescue, with no small help from whiskey-laced coffee. Then she went to the bookcase and pulled out a large black paperback. Heavily dog-eared, its spine was cracked in so many places that Tara Lynn couldn't read the title. She'd soon learn it was also heavily annotated by Aunt Artemis in the margins. If we're gonna rescue Althea and the others, we're gonna have to do it right. Aunt Artemis plopped the book onto the table between them. This, she said, is the Anarchist Cookbook. Harsh fluorescent lighting filled the detention center. There was nowhere to hide, so the raiders just charged ahead. Hudson shot a man at point blank and took his keycard. He had to wipe the card on his shirt before he could use it. By then, 8 raiders had met up inside the main structure. Aunt Artemis had insisted on radio silence, so Hudson sent 2 back to bust out the caged kids and lead them to where Aunt Artemis and her friends waited with pickups and SUVs. Aunt Artemis had done most of the strategic planning herself, but Hudson had grown up in a militia family. He knew tactics. That's why she'd tapped him to lead the raid. Tara Lynn just hoped they'd brought enough vehicles. It already looked like there'd be more prisoners than they'd figured on. And once they got away, then what? Aunt Artemis spoke of an underground railroad to the western Free States, but Tara Lynn didn't think it could handle that many unaccompanied children, not from this deep in the Southern Coalition. The 6 remaining raiders reached a spot where 2 hallways crossed. Tara Lynn remembered it from the blueprints. All 3 paths led to cell blocks. Here's where we split up, Hudson said. Tara Lynn, you're with me. Terry and Frank, go left. Toto and Ursula, you go straight. You got it, Terry said. Toto saluted as he followed Ursula down the forward route. Hudson handed Tara Lynn the key card, and they started down the right-hand corridor. You free the prisoners, I'll cover you. That was fine with her. He was the better shot, and his gun packed more punch than her Glock. Not that she was a bad shot herself. Her daddy had taken her shooting many times after he'd given her the gun for her 14th birthday. It was the only pink thing she still owned. Before they reached the cell block, 2 guards ran out of a side room. They seemed surprised the raiders had gotten that far. They fumbled, trying to draw their pistols. Hudson dropped the first one, and Tara Lynn found herself bracing with both arms like Daddy had taught her. She shot the second before Hudson could even take aim. Blood and teeth sprayed out as the bullet struck the guard's jaw. His head cracked against the wall, and he slid down to the floor. He gave a gurgling moan and attempted a scream, maybe, but he couldn't seem to work his jaw right anymore. Hudson didn't slow down, so Tara Lynn followed him, past the dead and the wounded guard, on into the cell block. Every cell was crammed full of men, alert and pressing against the bars. Tara Lynn keyed open the first cell, and the men poured out. They ran past their rescuers toward freedom. A couple stooped to grab the fallen guard's weapons. They'll make a good distraction, just like Aunt Artemis said. Cell by cell, Tara Lynn freed the prisoners. One of them she knew, a regular at the Kroger she worked at. He thanked her and told her the women were in the block on the opposite side of the building. Hudson heard him too. His eyes met hers. Go, find your friend. I'll see you outside. She gave him the key card and ran back the way they'd come. When she reached the downed guards, they were both dead. She took the key card from the one she'd shot. Prisoners filled the junction where the raiders had split up. Most squeezed toward the main entrance, but some headed down side passages, looted guns ready, seemingly bent on revenge. A couple of prisoners rolled on the floor fighting. They punched and kicked one another, ignoring everything else. Tara Lynn skirted them and continued toward the women's block, pushing past newly freed prisoners. "You're going the wrong way, honey," a plump middle-aged woman cried, clearly trying to be helpful. "Follow me. I'll get you out." "I'm looking for someone," Tara Lynn shouted as the tide swept the woman away. One prisoner nearly ran her down, her eyes panicked animals. Another shoved her aside as she passed. Her head banged painfully against the wall. Tara Lynn noticed she was crying. Perhaps had been crying ever since she'd shot the guard. "What am I doing? I need to get out of here." She tried taking a breath, but she felt like she was drowning. All she inhaled was darkness and death. And then Althea was there, grabbing her hand, pulling her into the tide that flowed from the building and out into the clean dark of night. Outside, Tara Lynn could breathe again. The tears came, but she felt only joy. People thronged the courtyard, streamed toward the breached outer wall. Then the floodlights snapped back on. They caught Althea's face in stark light, a black eye, several bruises, and half a dozen round burns as if from cigarettes. Her eyes shone with determination, though, and more. They found Tara Lynn's, and they were full of love. A fresh spray of bullets, and the crowd, panicked, surged forward. But it parted as a huge pickup burst into the courtyard. Tires screeching, it stopped before Tara Lynn and Althea, shielding them from the gunfire. Aunt Artemis reached across the seat, flung open the passenger door, and practically pulled them into the cab. She threw the Ford into gear, made a U-turn, and floored it. They passed people running, people crying, people dying. Hudson lay in the dirt covered in blood, his head at an impossible angle. In the cab, Althea slumped against Tara Lynn. A wetness formed between them, and Tara Lynn smelled copper. That meant something, she knew, something important, but she couldn't seem to focus her thoughts. The pickup bounced over the main gate, now fallen, and sped onto the access road. Aunt Artemis spared Althea a glance as she gunned the engine. "Pressure!" she shouted. "Put pressure on her shoulder! Now!" The words crystallized Tara Lynn's thoughts. She found the wound and shoved both palms onto it, pushing Althea back against the seat. Althea screamed, but Tara Lynn kept the pressure on. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." She repeated it over and over, a mantra of raw emotion, until finally Althea turned to her and smiled through gritted teeth. "It's okay," she gasped. "You did good tonight." Her smile faltered, then returned. "You know, for a degenerate." Aunt Artemis didn't dare take Althea to a hospital, but she drove to a doctor friend's. He didn't seem a bit surprised to see them. He had several cots ready in a room at the back of the house, and 2 assistants as well. Tara Lynn lost track of time while the doc operated. She sat with Aunt Artemis in the living room, hidden from the street by thick curtains. Using a burner phone, Aunt Artemis got periodic updates on the fallout from the raid. Tara Lynn had been ID'd, possibly from when Mr. Grundy had spoken her name. She and Althea were both going to have to take the Underground Railroad, and they couldn't come back. The monumental size of that loss, Aunt Artemis, her friends, the only town she'd ever known, fell away when the doctor came out to tell them Althea was stable and in recovery. On her phone, Aunt Artemis arranged for Tara Lynn and Althea to hide at another friend's house, a stop on the Underground Railroad, while Althea recovered her strength. More patients arrived, and the doctor returned to his makeshift hospital. Aunt Artemis stood and took Tara Lynn's hand, pulling her up gently. "I have to go now. They'll keep me posted on YouTube, but once I leave here, it won't be safe for me to come back anytime soon, or visit the place they'll be taking you. So, this is it." "Wait, you mean I'll never?" Aunt Artemis smiled sadly. Tara Lynn noticed that her own anti-facial recognition makeup had incorporated her black lipstick. "Someday, I'm sure. I may have to take the railroad myself at one point. Or, we just might win. An assistant came out and told Tara Lynn that she could go back and see Althea. Go on now, Aunt Artemis told her. We'll meet again. Tara Lynn nodded. When we win. Right then, she could believe that someday, maybe even someday soon, they just might. This story is dedicated to Terry Bisson.
Nothing like a good resistance story for these times. And a great dedication too. We all miss him. Thank you, Cliff, very much. It's
Thank
our
you.
custom here at Story Hour to just pause and let the work resonate. And there's a lot to resonate with that right now. So I'm going to just take a breath. And if y'all are so inclined, I suggest you do so as well, and we will resume in just a moment. All right, Cliff Winnig, everybody. Thanks so much, Cliff. Our next author is another Story Hour repeat offender. Marion Deeds was first with us in July 2021, and we are just delighted, pleased as punch, to have her back. Marion is the author of Come Up and Serve Cold, published by Tor.com Books, and the Portal Fantasy Trilogy Copper Road from Falstaff Books. Marion's short fiction has appeared in podcasts, daily science fiction, and several anthologies. Her stories take place at the penumbra of reality, at the border of otherworldliness. She enjoys playing with language. She's delighted to be back on Story Hour, and Marion, we are delighted to have you back on Story Hour. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I said this before, but I'll say it for the whole group. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy Year of the Snake. I'm going to read two short pieces. They're both about dead people, but they have there's a marked change of tone between the two of them. Content advisory would be physical violence and sexual assault rendered in intentionally euphemistic language. So the first one is called, oh, by the way, I'm looking down because I am very old school and I'm actually reading from paper. So the first one is called The Dead Dance at the Park and Ride. At 2 in the morning, the dead rise and dance in the Farhand Road Park and Ride on the south edge of town. The oxygen tube snaking across your face, the gauge pinching your finger, and the soft sounds of the machines all keep your sleep light, but it is still sleep. If you were awake, you could look out your window of your private room, gaze across the potholed street to the paved lot, and watch them congregate. Of course, not everyone can see them, but you would be able to, ready to, now. Why 2 in the morning? Some folks say that 2 in the morning is the true witching hour, when the veil between the living and dead is thinnest. Or maybe it's just that the dance clubs these spirits frequented shut their doors then, humans spilling out into the velvety darkness every weekend morning at 2 a.m. It's Tuesday morning, yet they gather. If you were awake, you could see the salsa dancers first, hips shimmying, curls swirling. The two salsa clubs where they used to dance are now a parking structure. There's only a double handful of them. After all, these dancers were younger, with fewer deaths among them. Women in their sleek dresses mince on their stiletto heels, tiny purses bouncing against their hips. The men twirl their partners, their arms rigid, hips fluid. If you were watching them, you'd imagine you could hear the music, maybe a classic like Montuno Street. Now, up from the dead end of Farhand Road, right across from the on-ramp, strut the revelers from the way west. Tight sky blue or lemon yellow pants flexing, jackets opened, shirts unbuttoned to navels, gold gleaming on chests as they disco march to the spot. The Way West opened in 1979. It never invested in a neon sign, just a wooden one, a cowboy hat, and a pair of boots. The men who needed to always found their way there. There are plenty of women in the Way West group, though. They knew they could go there to dance without worrying about getting hassled, roofied, or assaulted on the way to their cars. The Way West contingent, larger than the salsa group, moves in synchronization, hips, arms, and legs. If you could hear music, it might be the disco classic, I Feel Love. There's a rumor that Freddie Mercury once came to the Way West incognito and danced with all the handsome boys. Not true, though. There's a rumor that when you visited your family for Thanksgiving or Christmas, you would sneak down to the Way West and dance until closing. Then you'd lead a squad to the taco trucks on the corner. That rumor's true. There's also a rumor that your mother said a rosary for your soul every Friday because of how you were with other men. Unconfirmed, but seems likely. You had a good career, and you're still famous. Fans still come to this skilled nursing facility to visit you. They bring boxes of those imported cookies because you mentioned them once on that dance competition show you judged. New dancers ask for your help with interpretations. What's the best way to condition for Creature? How do I make Romeo relevant? You are still a legend. From your wheelchair, cannula in your nostrils, your wasted limbs hidden under linen trousers, and your signature dark blue pullover. Dance scholars and historians, like those women who wrote the book on the McLaren Club, set up interviews, listen to your stories, ask respectful follow-up questions. You were Benjamin Vargas, after all. You still are. Usually, when the dead get to the park and ride, they dance. This morning, instead, they wait, swaying slightly, forming a large half circle in the center of the lot. None of them died in those dance clubs. No, in death they come back to the moments when they were most alive, when the steps they'd practiced and practiced became so intimate that mind wasn't part of it. It was all warm sweat, swelling muscle, the throb of the music, and the pump, pump, pump of the heart. Like you, they simply loved to dance. Your father never forgave you that he couldn't leave Vargas sheet metal to his only son. Your mother was proud of you, your mother who lived for the fourth Saturday of the month, when she fastened a fabric rose in her curled hair, cinched her wide lapel jacket over a dress the red of ripe pomegranate seeds, forced your father into his faded zoot suit, and took him off to the McLaren. For a few hours, she wasn't a mother of three, a part-time hotel maid, an obedient Catholic wife. She was wild and glamorous. You reminded her of that. And while she feared for your soul, she loved your virtuosity. The McLaren opened in the late 1940s. Famous bands played there. All the dancers and all the lovers came to McLaren at least once. Times changed, though, and in the early 1990s, the club's profits dwindled. One morning, hours after closure, it burned to the ground. The owners left the state a few hours ahead of the police, and the lot sat vacant, wrapped in chain link fencing. Only tall weeds and wild oats danced there until the city turned it into the park and ride. The dead dancers stand, shifting from one foot to the other, waiting. If you could see this, you'd see the misty doors of the McLaren appear out of the darkness. They swing open, spilling blue and gold light onto the gray pavement. You'd see a stream of men and women sashay out. You'd see fedoras, red lips, curled hair, flashing rhinestones, men's peacock green suits, sheath dresses in garnet and amethyst, pencil skirts, poodle skirts, hot pink minis, and white go-go boots. You'd see them dance, the samba, the rumba, the bossa nova. The salsa and disco dancers begin to clap silently along, counting the beat. Out come the tango dancers, body to body, gliding like swans. Women in gold lame and men with white shirts and suspenders lindy hop out as if their feet are on springs. Behind them, two lines of dancers wearing jeans, boots, and hats bounce out, elbows akimbo, fingers on belt buckles, two-stepping and brush swing kicking. The salsa dancers turn now, one pair at a time, and swoop across the street. The disco bunch marches across next. And now, the crowd from the McLaren. They dance through the 18-wheel rig heading home after a 14-hour run, and the driver looks confused for a second or two. They dance through the low fence, across the managed green lawn with its careful bright plantings, up the paved walkway. An alarm beeps, yellow alert. I approach your bed, confirm you're dropping oxygen numbers. I'm no angel of death, just your nurse, your companion these past several weeks. I've been your witness as you ruminated on your life, and now I'll be the audience for your last performance on this stage. I check your gauges. The private room is filled with dancers. Lights from the machines sparkle off jewelry, slick fabric, shiny hair. I press the alarm on the wall above your head. You sit up. Your skin is smooth and tanned, your dancer's muscles supple. The skimpy layer of silver gray across your skull transforms into the glowing black waves that were your trademark. Your eyes sparkle. You draw up your knees and spring upright on the bed. A doctor throws open the door and strides into the room. You stand on the edge of the bed and leap, a grand jeté, the move that earned you the title of 21st century Baryshnikov. The machines flatline. I move forward to start CPR as you whirl into the center of the crowd. You shimmy your hips with the salsa dancers, embrace a woman in a moment of rumba, and then raise your arms and throw back your head as you lead the Way West boys out of the room. You and the other dancers flow around the doctor like a glittering stream around a rock. The doctor and I start our dance, but what you've left unmoving beneath the sheet doesn't join us. I can't turn to look out the window, but I know you lead the dancers across Farhan Road into the park and ride and through the misty doors of the McLaren, which swing shut behind you. There's a rumor that the night you died, a parade of the dead appeared and danced you home. And that one's true. Okay, and now for something completely different. This is a hermit crab story, which is a name that someone I have met has for stories that are not told in a traditional story format. They use a format of an email, in this case, or letters, or a recipe, or a pamphlet. And this is a reservation confirmation for a vacation, and it's called Your Gold Country Adventure. Welcome. We're looking forward to your stay at Doomtown Manor, California's most haunted guest house. Your itinerary for 6 guests is listed at the bottom of this email. We have received your deposit and the notarized liability waivers, and you have accepted our terms and conditions. Located in Northern California's fabled gold country, the village of Doomtown offers nature hikes, river rafting, llama wrangling, panning for gold, and roadshow quality antiquing. From the old mines to the historic Chinese cemetery, the town drips California history. The jewel in the village's crown is Doomtown Manor, built in 1885 by gold, silver, and petroleum tycoon Elijah Fremont Kane. Until his shocking death in 1915, Kane used the manor as a home base, hosting salons and meetings with all the great men of his day. Kane engaged in hands-on philanthropy, mentoring a number of young women of vulnerable virtue. He turned his attic into a dormitory and taught these unfortunates many skills considered useful for young ladies of the time. Several of his seamstresses, as they were called, went on to have great social success. Some did not. In 1915, one of his charges, Mabel Watt, also known as Red Mabel, stabbed Kane to death. She is one of only 3 women ever hanged in this county. For more about Red Mabel, visit our sister site, goldcountrydead.com/ghostwalk. Plan to arrive no later than sunset. If you will be delayed for any reason, please call or text the number below, and we will arrange alternative lodging for your first night. The manor provides an invigorating and truly unique lodging experience. The guidelines below will ensure your stay is as safe, comfortable, and memorable as possible, allowing you to return home with original stories to tell family and friends. 1. The painting in the foyer is indeed of Elijah Fremont Kane. The eyes do seem to follow you about. Do not stare back at the portrait. 2. Some guests believe they hear a baby crying under the ground floor stairwell. Do not investigate. There is no baby. 3. The long, opulent room on the ground floor is called the smoking lounge. Despite its name, no smoking is permitted there or anywhere in the manor. The lounge is a popular place for seances. During those events, some female guests report feeling a presence looming behind them, breathing on their necks. Some feel a wave of oppression and violation, and some report shortness of breath or a sense of being choked. Consider limiting your time in the smoking lounge. 4. The basement is off limits to guests, no matter what you think you hear. The door is always locked. Even if it isn't locked, the basement is off limits. Don't go down there. 5. Some guests hear they've heard a baby crying in the scullery. Do not investigate. There is no baby. 6. We keep the 13 mirrors in the house covered. For your comfort, leave them that way. If someone from your party is found gazing into one of the mirrors, remove them from the property right away and call or text the number below. 7. The attic is off limits, no matter what you think you hear. The door to the attic stairs is always locked. Even if it isn't locked, the attic is off limit. Don't go up there. If you see a set of wet red footprints leading to the stairs, do not follow them. 8. For safety and convenience, when you are bathing or showering, please use the iron door stops we provided to prop open your bathroom door. We also recommend a buddy system with a person always within earshot while you are bathing. 9. Some guests believe they've heard a baby crying somewhere on the 3rd floor. Do not investigate. There is no baby. No baby. Trust me. 10. The closet door in the green bedroom does not open into a closet, but to a shaft that descends below the basement. Do not lower yourself down the shaft, no matter what you think you hear. Earplugs are stored in the 2 bedside stands. For the record, most guests say they hear weeping and praying from the attic and screams and curses from the air shaft. Please share your opinions on our encounters page. 11. You may hear tapping sounds from the upper doors near the outer walls. These are merely our local flitters and Nuttall woodpeckers. Nothing to worry about. 12. Don't split up. 13. You may hear a slow, steady tapping from the bottom of the green bedroom air shaft. It seems to climb up the walls, getting slower and louder until you hear it everywhere as it pounds away around the house, wall to wall, floor to floor. This is not the woodpeckers. If you hear it, gather your group and leave the house at once. Seriously, don't stop to pack. Don't split up. Don't look in the mirrors. Once you are clear of the property, call the number below. After your stay, our parent company may ask some of your party to complete a brief survey. We eagerly await those 5-star reviews. We are looking forward to meeting you and getting you started on your once-in-a-lifetime vacation experience. See you soon, Abigail Watt, Innkeeper. So much for the Scooby Gang visiting.
All right. Thank you so much, Marion. Marion.
I love the comments.
All right. Marion Deeds, everybody. Thank you for joining us again. It's Story Hour, Marion. Welcome back anytime, as are you, Cliff.
It
I
was
want to thank you
great
both
fun.
for a great program. And I would be remiss if I did not thank my co-host, Laura Blackwell. Thank you, co-host Laura Blackwell. And thanks to all of you for coming back every week. So
Thanks for doing Story Hour because it's great.
yeah.
And I have a feeling in the upcoming years I'm going to need something to help keep my sanity, and I have a feeling this will be one of those things.
Well, I hear that, truly. So come on back next week, both of you and all of you out there. We will have Wole Talabi and Lawrence Raphael brothers. Both
Oh,
have been with us before, and we're really delighted to have them back.
very cool.
Till then, be safe. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. One day at a time. It's pretty crazy out there. See you soon, folks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.